today's video for Vlogmas. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how I use my Addie king size hat knitting machine. There are quite a few reference videos on YouTube as well as some pattern videos. However, I haven't found one video that really explains the whole process from start to finish. So I thought that I would show you how I make my charity hats on this machine. So again, this is the Addie king size hat knitting machine. I got it on Amazon. They run, I believe it was like $200 to $250. It is a higher end model. They have some cheaper hat knitting machines though, that you can search for on Amazon and find. I even think Walmart stocks them. So the pattern that I'm going to be showing you how to make today, I believe, is called the fireside beanie. There is another YouTube tutorial that I watched to learn how to make it, but it's basically just a very basic flexible beanie, and it's super simple to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do when setting up your machine is when you take it out of the box, it will be set up like this. Now you can work flat on this machine. I'm not going to show, I've never done that yet, and so I'm not going to really explain how to do that. There is a little switch on the side if you want to work flat. There are some other instructions you would need to do, but that's what that switch is for. So the first thing that I do is I flip my machine over. They have these are basically guards right here, so it protects the pin, so you can actually flip it all the way over and lay it on its top without damaging anything. And then these have like a gripper feet, so you just need to screw these in on all four sides. And you don't need to really tighten them too much. I always take my machine apart and put it back in the box when I'm finished using it. So I don't really put them in tight. They don't have to be super tight. So then after you screw your feet in, you're going to flip the machine back over. This over here is the crank handle. So you're going to want to move it to the black starting pin, and you're going to want that black starting pin just past this yarn holder. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to attach the grips to keep it from moving, and I'm actually going to preset these because I was using this on my kitchen table downstairs that has a wide base, and now I'm using it on my craft table, which has a narrow base, so I don't need as much room on these. Okay, so what you're going to do, and it's probably going to be difficult for you to see, but let me flip it over and I'll show you. Basically, you're going to attach the hook part around the leg, and then this grip part will go on the underside of your table, and you're going to tighten it. So I also saw a video where they said that you want to make sure that the openings are facing to the right, so that, or facing towards the same size so that it doesn't come loose as you're moving it. But honestly, with the gripper feet, you don't have to use the grips if you don't want to. It's pretty, it sits still pretty well without it. And I actually made these too narrow, so now I need to loosen them.
Oops, don't need more. So I'm just going to tighten this one.
And you do want to be careful after you put your grips on, because this is these are very long bolts, and they're going to be sitting basically right where your legs are, and so if you move and you forget about them, you can scrape it against your leg and get a bruise, because I did that several times when I was making a big batch of charity hats this year. Today I am going to show two different yarns. This one is some Aran weight yarn. It is indie dyed. I dyed it up, I don't know, like almost over a year ago now, for a sweater, and I had an extra skein. So I'm going to start with using that just because it's a little brighter and easier to see. So what I like to do is I like to set my cake on the floor, and you do want to make sure it is in a cake or a skein, here I'll show you, or something like a hank or whatever this is called. This isn't a hank, I forget what these are called, but you want to make sure it's in that form. And I like to set it on the floor, and you want to pull from the center. You don't want to pull from the outside because your yarn will roll around and get tangled and it'll just become a big mess. The newer models will have a digital counter. You can't see my counter because the yarn holder's blocking it. I don't know if this is going to help or not. Mine is a manual counter, so you just want to make sure that that is set at 0. Mine's a manual counter. The digital counters had some issues with acrylic yarn. The static electricity would build up as you would do your hat, and they would kind of fritz out, so they put these manual counters back on. Now, when I say manual, it will automatically count. It's just instead of it being a digital readout, it's a manual readout. So this is the yarn clip. This is what holds your yarn and tensions your yarn while you are knitting. So the first thing you want to do is leave about a 12-inch tail, and I just like to throw it in the middle. And then you want to weave in, we're going to do our cast on row. So you want to put the yarn under the first black hook from left to right. So your yarn that you're pulling from should be on the right and your short tail should be on the left. And then you want to weave the yarn in as you turn the handle back and forth. So I'm going to turn the handle, and you want to move in a clockwise direction. So I went under the first black hook, so I'm going behind the second black hook, and then I'm going in front of the third black hook, and then I'm just going to keep going behind, in front, behind, in front. And you just want to really take your time with this because this is your cast on row. So if you mess it up, then you have to start all over. So you just want to make sure that you're accurately weaving behind, in front, and make sure that that hook, when it comes down on the opposite side, it's also catching the yarn. And you also want to try to keep your tension really loose. You don't want it too tight. You'll know that you probably cast it on correctly if you get to the last white peg before the first black one, and you should be behind instead of in front. So now you're going to just turn so that black hook is right past the yarn catch. You're gonna weave in, I'm gonna hook my yarn underneath that first black one, and then I'm going to pull it through the yarn holder, through the little hole, pull down, and then I'm going to close the clip. You want to make sure this clip is closed when you are using the machine, because if you leave it open, what will happen is the peg will come up underneath and it could break this off because it's just a plastic piece. So now you have your cast on row done. You should be able to see that each strand of yarn goes across 2 pegs on the inside. And then you just want to slowly turn to do your first row. And you will hear a click. That click means that your automatic counter just counted the first row. And you want to go kind of slow on this because you're still casting on the yarn and you don't want it to slip off, and you want to make sure it's catching everything. So just kind of go slow for the first 2 rounds. Okay, we made it back to the first. Okay, now I'm going to do my second row. And after you do your first row, you should see it's kind of like 2 X's, so 1 X under each peg. And then do your second row, and then it'll start to look kind of like a loop. So look over here and you see it looks like it's looped around. Okay, so, and that's it. So then you just keep cranking until your hat is done. Now I like to, the pattern that I use, again, I found a YouTube video, I believe it was called either Campside or Fireside Beanie, and I think they recommend 100 and, or maybe it was like 90 rows, but I've found that depending on the weight of your yarn, somewhere between 100 and 120 rows is best. If you know somebody that has like a bigger head or a taller head, you might want to go to like 125, 130. These hats are very customizable. Once you're done, you'll see that you can put a folded brim on it. So like if you want to do a folded brim, then you not put a folded brim on it, but you can fold it up to have a folded brim. And if you like that look, you can do a little more rows. If you like it a little more slouchy, you can do more rows. If you like it more fitted, you can do less rows. So it really is just trial and error. I make a lot of charity hats, so I kind of just try to do a mixture of all of them, so that there's all different sizes. So I am going to just get cranking now. Also, I did want to mention, you just put a little bit of tension. You don't have to do too much tension. I'm just holding the yarn in my left hand kind of loosely. I'm not pulling, I'm just kind of letting it run through my fingers to create some friction so that there is a little bit of tension there. Again, this yarn is Aran weight, so it's heavier than worsted weight, so I won't need as many rows as I would for a worsted weight hat. So I knit this hat to 115 rows. I stopped right after my last black peg, or my first black peg. So now it's time to cast off. There's many ways that you can cast off. My favorite way is to use waste yarn because it's just so much easier than if you use the needle to thread it off the hooks. So I'm gonna get my waste yarn ready, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave about another 12-ish inch tail, and I'm gonna snip my yarn and take it out of the yarn holder, and I'm going to toss this piece in the center. Then I am going to take my waste yarn, leave about a 12-inch tail, toss it in the center, and then I'm going to hook it under the first black peg. And this time, instead of weaving it in and out, all I need to do is pull my yarn through the yarn holder and close it. This is also how you would change colors, like if you want to make like a striped hat or a color blocked hat, this is how you would switch from your main color to your contrasting color. From there, I'm just gonna start turning for about 5 or 6, preferably about 6-ish more rows. I went ahead and did 10 rows. It's always better to have more rather than less. So now you're just going to snip a few inches off of your waste yarn and throw it in the middle and close your clip. Now, this is why I use waste yarn, because instead of having to actually cast off each individual stitch with a needle as I turn, all I have to do is turn it for one more round and it'll cast, or actually 2 more rounds, and it'll cast itself off. So we'll do the first round, and notice there's no yarn going into the hooks, and the second round, and you'll see that it'll start to fall off your machine. And then you have this big long tube. So this is also a way that you could make double, like a circular tube scarves, things like that. So now I have this, and it's a big long tube, and I am going to set this aside. I'm going to go ahead and crank up some more tubes, and then after I put my machine away, I will be back to show you how to turn this tube into your hat. Okay guys, so now it's time for me to show you how to turn this tube into one of these hats. So this is where the fun part is. It's where the magic happens. And here we go. So you will need scissors and a darning needle. I like to use the plastic darning needle that came with the knitting machine. It's easier to pick up the stitches, but if you can't use a plastic one, you can just make sure you have one that has like this curved tip at the end, because it's just going to make it a little bit easier to pick up those stitches. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start with the end that your waste yarn is on. So in this case, I have gray for my waste yarn. So you are going to take the tail end, and so this is the outside tail, the end that you ended with, and then if you flip it, kind of roll your hat inside, you'll see the inside tail. So you're going to take the inside tail of your working yarn, so that is the hat color, not your waste yarn, and you're going to thread it through your needle. And then you are going to begin, and I'm going to tuck this end in here so it doesn't get tangled. You're going to begin picking up all of these stitches right here. So I just pick up one stitch and then the next, and I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around. Doesn't really matter how you pick them up. I mean, I guess it does. You definitely want to go from the top, because if you go from the side of the loop, like if you go down here instead of up here, when you're unraveling your waist yarn, it'll get caught. So I'm just gonna go all the way around. So then once you get back to the beginning, I just like to thread it through that first loop one extra time. And then I'm going to tuck that end in so that it doesn't get tangled. And then once I make sure that I picked up all those loops in the middle, I'm going to unravel my waste yarn. And I do reuse this, so I will just ball it up and then I will put it in the box with my knitting machine, so next time that I do some hats, I will have some waste yarn to use. Okay, here's the fun part. So then I'm just going to stick my arm in the hole all the way to the other side, and then I'm going to grab my tail from that side and I'm going to kind of tighten it, but not all the way. So I'm just going to pull and it'll start to close up. Then I'm going to pinch that end. I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to go back in, and now I'm going to tighten that hole closed a little more. And you don't need to pull very tightly because you don't want your yarn to break. So just enough so that it's mostly closed. Then I'm going to grab the whole end with my hand, like a little sock puppet monster, and pull it back through. And then I'm going to switch to sticking my hand in this side, hold it, and I'm going to pull the end that we wove in through all those stitches. And I'm just going to make sure everything's just lined up. And then I am going to trim off all but about 4 to 5 inches of the tail. And then I'm going to tie a knot. And I like to, and I'm going to pull tight, but I'm not going to pull tight enough to break my yarn. And I like to have about 3 knots in there just to make sure it's extra secure. Then I'm going to weave in my ends by taking my darning needle and threading it with both ends at the same time. Easier said than done sometimes. I'm going to stick it through the top of the hat. See if I can find the hole. There we go. And I'm going to go in between the 2 layers. I want to make sure that right now my darning needle is in between the top layer and the inside layer. And I'm just going to push it down till it's about 1 inch or 2 below the crown. And then I'm going to poke it through and pull my end out. And I like to kind of pull my yarn up a little bit so that way when I snip, it's actually kind of shorter. So I snip it, and then I'm just going to give it a little tug, and the end is now inside of the hat. There you go. That is how you make these little beanies. And so you can make this with pretty much anything that's DK weight all the way up to Aran weights. I wasn't able to use chunky on my machine. You cannot use any of like the buckle yarn, anything that has like fuzzy frilly stuff on it, because it will get caught and tangled in your needles. Trust me, I tried. But Aran weight works good. Worsted weight, DK weight, those are all really good options. I considered doing fingering weight held double, but I think I would have the same problem as like the buckle yarn, like it would get tangled. Is if you went slow enough and made sure that your needle was picking up both stitches at the same time, you'd probably be okay. But this is, again, some indie dyed yarn that I dyed on Aran weight. This is a worsted weight red heart yarn that a friend gifted me for charity hats. And then this is Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks worsted weight. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'll talk to you soon.